third take on insulin sensitivity. This is the hardest thing to explain ever. It is so hard. All right, let me try it one more time. All right, so here's the deal. You got two places that nutrients can go: fat cells, muscle cells. The where they go is dependent off of the presence of insulin and how sensitive the muscle tissue is to insulin. See, fat cells are always sensitive to insulin. It's just a linear progression. The more insulin present, the more crap gets loaded into the fat cells. So to minimize the amount of crap that goes into fat cells and maximize the amount of stuff that goes into muscle cells, we want to keep insulin as low as possible and increase the insulin sensitivity of the muscle as much as possible. So how do we keep insulin low? We don't consume high glycemic carbohydrates, but you're supposed to post-workout, right? Yeah, you are, kinda. Let me explain. Okay, so the insulin you get from the carbohydrates post-workout is going to protect the muscles from the cortisol that would normally break it down because you're tearing down the muscle during the workout. That's the point of getting the insulin up. However, it's still going to shuttle a fair amount of the nutrients into the fat cells, and some of it will go into the muscle cells. If, for instance, you're able to use carbohydrates in a post-workout state without causing an insulin increase, in theory, all of them would go to the muscle cell because the muscle cell has very high insulin sensitivity post-workout. What this means is when the insulin molecule binds to the surface of the cell at the gyrus kinase receptor, and that migrates to the nucleolus, where the DNA is, and from that process, you get a GLUT4 transporter, which is the door that migrates to the surface of the cell to unlock and open, allowing carbohydrates, amino acids, and creatine into the muscle cell. All of that's way easier when the muscle cell's empty, like when you just worked out. The worst time of day to have carbohydrates is right first thing in the morning, because your muscle cells are not sensitive and everything just gets stored as fat. Now, I could go into a lot of other details about how diabetes works and how all this research done on sensitivity was done on diabetics. It doesn't really apply to bodybuilders. But the long and the short of it is this: you just need to get your insulin as low as possible and keep your insulin sensitivity as high as possible. Tricks to keeping your insulin sensitivity as high as possible, keeping your body fat as low as possible. A person with 5% body fat is going to store way more carbs in the muscle than a person at 15% or 20% body fat. Pretty much once you hit 15% body fat, your bulking season has to end, because almost everything you eat is going to turn to fat. Your insulin sensitivity sucks at this point. Furthermore, where you do store the fat is in the visceral compartment, which is inside your abdomen, around your organs, and that's what kills you. It's like androgen-dependent fat deposition. What's funny is some guy in live chat today was calling it android fat, which, it's you can't say it's androgynous because that would imply that it's ambiguous gender, but it would be really androgynous fat deposition, but that sounds like the fat deposition you'd find on someone who has no genitals. So he came up with android, which is like an androgenic humanoid. I guess where he came it from, but then it came out, android's like a phone or a robot. So that doesn't really apply, does it? So it's androgenic fat deposition is going to be the visceral fat. So even women with high insulin resistance are going to get some of that androgenic fat deposition in the visceral fat locations. So keeping your body fat down below 15% while you're bulking and using moderate GI carbs should prevent you from storing a lot of your carbohydrate intake as body fat, because you'll be keeping your insulin sensitivity up. People who are saying they're carb sensitive, they're not. They're actually carb insensitive, that the muscles are insensitive to the carbs, so they go to the fat cells. All right, so that's a lot shorter this time. It only took 4 minutes. This is Todd Lee MD with mindandmuscle.com. Have a wonderful day.